I invite the Minister for Social Development and Poverty Reduction to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
This is a poem by Rosalie Amber Grace. You don't need an altar. Sit on the ground. Feel your lover's body. Watch the sky. You don't need a perfect daily practice. Wash the dishes. Feel the joy spreading through your chest, the ache of grief. Practice being here amidst the mess of being human. Nothing to transcend, just everything to come home to.
Introductions by members. Member for Paul River Sunshine Coast.
I would like to wish a colleague of mine a happy birthday today. I don't know why I'm choking up. It's not my birthday. But I've known him since May 17, 2005. We've been friends since then and we'll be friends for life. My colleague and everyone's friend, member for Couch and Nanaimo North Couch, and happy birthday, Doug.
Matt. Member for Langley East.
Oh, thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaking of birthdays, today is a very special day. 21 years ago on this day, I became a mom for the first time. I gave birth to a adorable 6-pound, 7-ounce bundle of joy, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I am the luckiest parent on the planet. I'm now the mother of a 6'9", 240-pound boy with size 17 shoes. I look at him and there's no resemblance, but he is the kindest, sweetest, most amazing human, and I've learned far more from him than he's learned from me, and I'm wondering if the House could please join me in wishing him a very happy 21st birthday. Happy birthday, AJ.
Member for Children and Family Development. Sorry, Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm joined today by students from Vic High and their teacher, Mr. Bradley. I had the chance to go to Vic High with the Minister for Environment and Climate Change and talk to some of the incredible student leaders there and have a conversation, and wanted to provide an opportunity as we're in the capital to come to this place to see how this works. The Parliamentary Secretary for Youth, some version of that title, and I are going to have lunch with them today. And it's just such an honor to be joined in this space by youth who are interested and engaged and have an opportunity to have that conversation. I'm also joined today by my constituency advisors, Aaron Willis and Adriana Tom, and I know all members of this House know what it means to have your folks on the ground and in community to support the work and connect. And so will the House please help me make these students, Mr. Bradley, and my CAs welcome.
Member for Peace River North.
Yeah, thanks, Honourable Speaker. Delighted to welcome a very good friend of mine to the House today, Bobby Wisdahl. Has lived down here, and then she moved to Fort St. John for a number of years, and now she's back down here. So really great that she took the time to come down and visit with all of us and to watch the happenings. I believe it's her first time watching Question Period, at least live. So would the House please make Bobby feel welcome?
Member for Courtney Comox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the birthday of the first child born of all of my friends and relatives of my generation, and she works in the Premier's office, and she is the mother of an amazing little boy that I get to call the Big O, and he calls me Auntie Ray, and he sometimes visits the House. So would the House please wish Kate Van Meer-Mass a very happy birthday.
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Well, tomorrow is Childcare Professionals Appreciation Day, so please take the opportunity to reach out to childcare professionals in your community. And in celebration of that, we have some in the House here today from the Cridge Centre. The Cridge Centre is a non-profit community social service organisation that's been serving the community of Victoria for over 150 years. So, who do we have today? We have Timothy Latour, the School Age Care Preschool Coordinator, Danielle Robbins, the Infant Toddler Coordinator, Jennifer Hunter, the Daycare Coordinator, Angela Brunwald, ECE Daycare, Tanya Kuhn, ECE Preschool, and Christine Wazilius, the Manager. Would you please make them very welcome and show your appreciation for their work?
Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm so pleased to see a group of high school students and their teacher joining us in the gallery today. Mr. Brad Cunningham and 13 or 14 senior students from Reynolds Secondary School are here, and they're part of what is called the Flex Studies program, which is an incredible program that teaches kids about government, social issues, business, commerce, and navigating the ways of society, and it's a great group of students. They're no strangers here to the Legislature. In fact, I think thanks to Mr. Cunningham, we've probably tripled the number of senior high school students that actually come to the Legislative Assembly. So I would ask all members of the House to make them most welcome here today.
Member for Coquitlam Burke Mountain.
Speaker, I'd like to introduce one of my constituency advisors, Justin Smith, who is here with us today. Justin works in my constituency office along with the fabulous Linda Auskerson, the dynamic Melody Mohabka, and the connector, Parissa Chen. They are an amazing team, and I'm so lucky to have such a talented staff. Justin is super psyched to watch Question Period today. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the chamber floor in the future. Speaker, Justin got a taste of politics when he ran for council in the last municipal election. He says he's learned a lot since then and is looking forward to future opportunities. I wish him the best of luck, and would the House please make him welcome.
Member for Paul River Sunshine Coast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And even after 19 years, I've never had the opportunity to wish two people happy birthday on the same day. But in fact, it's the first birthday of my youngest nephew, Auguste, who was born a year ago today. And I just want to wish him a happy birthday.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It just came to my mind that tomorrow is called Healthcare Auxiliary Day. And I just want to shout out to, there's many hospital auxiliaries across the province, but the best one is the Delta Hospital Auxiliary. And my mom, who's going to be 97 in August, still goes one day a week to volunteer at the Delta Hospital Auxiliary Thrift Shop in Ladner. Yeah, I'm the third. She's first, Pam second, I'm third. But the Delta Hospital Auxiliary is donating $3 million to the new extended care ward that we're going to get built, and $700,000 this year to new equipment at Delta Hospital. So a big shout out to everyone involved in volunteering for your hospital auxiliaries across BC.
Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill entitled the Family Compensation Amendment Act, of which notice has been given in my name on the order paper, be introduced and read for the first time now. Honourable Speaker, Logan Power was a vibrant young man in Dawson Creek attending secondary school in 2016, but tragically, his life was cut short by a suspected drunk driver. Despite their profound loss, Logan's family received no compensation simply because Logan did not meet the narrow economic criteria recognized under the discriminatory existing laws. This is unfortunately not an isolated case in British Columbia. Under the BC Family Compensation Act, the lives of children, seniors, those with disabilities, and those without dependents are actually considered worthless when they are killed. British Columbia stands as an outlier. Many other provinces have modernized their laws to reflect a more comprehensive understanding of loss and accountability of wrongful deaths. Our laws have not been updated in alignment with these changes, leaving many British Columbians unprotected and their families, like the Powers, without recourse. Logan's Law proposes to correct these injustices by expanding eligibility for claims and adjusting compensation levels to align more closely with the realities of wrongful deaths. This includes allowing parents, siblings, or dependents to claim compensation in the event of a wrongful death. This compensation will help families cover expenses, medical and funeral costs, travel, accommodation, and other costs incurred while caring for the injured person before their death. It also helps align British Columbia with other provinces which have already updated their laws to address the consequences of wrongful deaths more comprehensively. The bill introduces necessary changes and were recommended by the Ministry of Attorney General back in 2010, addressing critical gaps that have allowed these injustices to persist. It will ensure that all families, regardless of their economic status of their loved ones, can seek and obtain justice. People are increasingly aware of these issues and demand that we take decisive action to reform our wrongful death compensation laws, and it's time for us to ensure that this justice is accessible for every family touched by this tragedy. Thank you.
Member, the question is first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member?
I move that the bill be placed on the orders of the day for second reading at the next sitting of the House after today.
You heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk.
Statements by members.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
On April the 26th, both the Minister of Health and I attended a remarkable event at the UBC Centre for Brain Health. Project Hope has been driven by ALS patients, their families, caregivers, the ALS Society of BC, and successive governments. Project Hope has been described as a beacon of light in the fight against ALS, and I could not agree more. Under the leadership of neurologist and ALS researcher Dr. Eric Pioro, a world-class ALS clinical care team will be assembled. They will be the cornerstone of Project Hope and will allow ALS patients to participate in groundbreaking clinical trials and research endeavors, all with the goal of finding a cure for ALS. The ALS Society describes Project Hope as more than a project. Rather, it is a movement towards understanding, treating, and ultimately defeating ALS. It is a bold and ambitious plan and journey. Attending the event was Dr. Andrew Eisen, who founded the ALS Society of British Columbia, and he is a distinguished ALS physician scientist. There were ALS board members, and perhaps most importantly, some who have been impacted directly by ALS, and families and loved ones of those who have lost their lives to ALS. It was an emotional day for all of us. Yes, we are inspired by the hope that this work brings, but our hearts hurt for those who will not see the direct benefits of the incredible work that will be done by Dr. Pioro and his team. We also want to recognize the tireless efforts of Wendy Toyer. She was a significant part of reaching this milestone. It has been a dream of many to bring an end to ALS through creating a world-class ALS center at UBC. After listening to Dr. Piero share his vision and passion, I have every confidence that British Columbia, fueled by hope and driven by science, will play a pivotal role in making a difference in the lives of those affected by this devastating disease.
Member for Courtenay-Comox.
Honorable Speaker, this week is Emergency Preparedness Week, and since technology sure plays a part in all of our lives, this year's theme is using technology before, during, and after emergencies. You never know how you will react when the adrenaline rush hits, and being ready beforehand will help keep you safe. With wildfire season coming up, it's a good time to get to know the hazards in your community, make your emergency plan, and build an emergency kit and grab-and-go bag. And hot off the presses, you can get started with our brand new online emergency ready planner at preparedbc.ca/emergency ready. It'll help make it faster and easier to create an emergency and evacuation plan that's tailored to you and your family. The planner helps people identify emergency meeting places, document important contact, medical, and insurance information, and it recommends supplies for your emergency kits and grab-and-go bags, as well as fire-smart steps to protect your home from wildfire. Make a date with your loved ones to play with the planner, so when you hear the BC emergency alert on your cell phone or radio or on television, like you received on Wednesday morning at 10:55, you'll all be ready. BC is forecasted to have an active wildfire season, and places like Vancouver Island are not immune to the risk. You can access the BC Wildfire app to keep abreast of wildfire conditions, fire bans, and evacuation alerts and orders. Our government also has a new online portal to help emergency responders find commercial accommodation for evacuees. These new and improved tools are released by our government as part of Emergency Preparedness Week to help keep people safe through wildfires, droughts, floods, and earthquakes. There's no time like the present to do your part to get prepared for the unexpected. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for West Vancouver Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May 7th was National Child and Youth Mental Health Day, and it's really meant as a time for us to come together and to recognize that there are significant mental health challenges that are faced by our children and our youth, and it's really time for us to pledge to help and support. It's a really different time, Mr. Speaker, than it was when most of us in the House here were younger and we were going to school. There's social media now, and social media has its good and bad pieces, but for many young people it can be, it's an opportunity to be bullied. There's all kinds of things there that are challenging and concerning. Climate change, these young people, I don't think we realize enough how much climate change weighs on their shoulders every day and causes a lot of anxiety. I was speaking to one of our interns last week, and she was talking about, she's 22, and she was talking about the fact that we all walk around with AirPods on now, right? That's what they're called, right? AirPods. And we can sit, you go into a room and there's people around and you sit there and you just don't have conversations anymore. So we're just, for young people, we are, our technology has started to disconnect them from people. And so she said something that really made me think about this. I hope she doesn't mind, because I didn't know I was going to talk about this until just now, is that, we went from having a large social circle as a young person, and now it's really limited. And a lot of it is because the AirPods and the not talking to people, and everything is done via text. And that can be quite concerning, because we need to have those supports as a young person. And we heard from Take a Hike the other day, is that really we don't have enough mental health supports in schools for young people. And we really, we owe them that. They are our future, and we need to make sure that we're holding them up and we're treating them well and we're giving them the supports that they need. They need early support and resources in schools. And so together, let's help our young people, lift them up and give them the support they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Vernon Monashi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise in this House to recognize May being Caregivers Month, to honor all the hardworking and dedication hard work and dedication that caregivers offer around the clock in our province and around the world. Caregivers are some of the most caring people in this world. They always think about the well-being of people in their care, and they can sometimes forget their own needs. We cannot imagine the world and care without caregivers. Often what we see about their sacrifices, dedication, hard work is just tip of the iceberg. It takes lots of patience, kindness, care, hard work, and dedication to become a caregiver. While we recognize caregivers today to honor them, we also need to reflect on and to create awareness about caregiver burnout. Their work includes many sleepless nights and countless hours spent supporting their loved ones. I want to acknowledge this and let people know that supports are available around the province. Our government has invested in Budget 2024 the expansion of Family and Friend Caregiver Support Program. This program provides support for caregivers' assistance, navigating the healthcare system, as well as learning how to take care of your own well-being while caring for someone close to you. We also continue to expand culturally appropriate adult day programs in the province. These programs not only improve lives and socialization of seniors, but also benefit caregivers. If you are a caregiver or know a caregiver, please help to support them and increase awareness of Family and Friends Caregiver. Family Caregivers of BC is also a great resource. They offer supports to caregivers by telephone or online, in person or virtual meetings, and providing resources. I urge you to go to www.familycaregiversbc.ca. Please join me in recognizing family and friends caregiver in our province and across the country for their selfless, tireless, exceptional care they provide, and to honor their role in so many people's lives. Thank you.
Third party House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the past year, I've been doing this work as an MLA, and I've also been doing graduate studies in leadership at Royal Roads University. I wrote a paper recently focused on power and our relationship as MLAs to power. Think of all the ways that you intersect with power. It was a profound experience for me to think on this, and the ceremonial mace was a central feature of the work that I did. How many of us have thought about the mace, the type of power that's symbolized in that mace? Each day it arrives carried by our Sergeant at Arms, leading a procession of the Speaker and clerks. Ever wondered why? The mace, also known as a bludgeon, is a modified club, often reinforced with stone, bone, bronze, or iron. It's from the Dark Ages, and our silver one here was made in the 1950s. There's no law or decree that started the Speaker's procession or giving the ceremonial mace its power. The power comes from what happens when you get bludgeoned by a mace. In the 14th to 15th century, mayors of British towns had Sergeant at Arms who carried a mace, and for protection for arrests. It was also the sergeant's standard weapon of choice at the time. In 1414, Henry V appointed Nicholas Mott the Sergeant at Arms for Westminster, and like the mayors he had seen around, he brought him with him his mace. Interesting, the Speaker at the time was simply just the mouthpiece of the Commons. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. But when the Speaker got the protection of the sergeant and the mace, its power in the mace transferred to the Speaker. And a century later, this Speaker's precinct, what the Speaker says goes. Power moves in mysterious ways, and the power represented in the mace is a brutish, thuggish, primitive sort of power, Mr. Speaker. And is that the expression of power that we want our democracy represented by?
Member for North Coast.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today I rise to talk about an often not talked about issue of ADHD. ADHD is often classified or diagnosed as a mental health disorder, but in fact it's a neurological development disorder, meaning that the brain is formed not neurotypically. So it's something that is you have from birth. And it was misunderstood for a long time as a behavioral disorder, which we know it is not. And unfortunately, because some of the symptoms seem like they are very easy to treat by neurotypical people, it's led to kids with ADHD having heard 20,000 times more negative comments or input than a neurotypical child. So by age 12, if you have ADHD, you have heard 20,000 more negative comments. And they can be really benign. A parent could think this is the right thing to do. Why have you forgotten your homework again? How could you lose your keys again? Why can't you just sit still? And while we think these are normal parenting comments, they are in fact quite harmful. An ADHD brain looks differently, it's formed differently, but a main key factor is the fact that the dopamine receptors, there's a dysregulation with that. 28% of people who are referred to a mood disorders clinic for depression or anxiety, 28% actually have untreated ADHD. Physicians and doctors, very informed on prescribing medications such as SSRIs for depression and anxiety, however, not educated enough on ADHD. I just wanted to conclude with this saying, which is very relatable, and I think of Melanie Mark, who, when she departed here, talked about her invisible disability of ADHD. And it's like, how could someone's ADHD go undiagnosed for so long because they are a high-functioning, overachieving woman, constantly bordering on burnout, but seen as fine? Because as long as that woman didn't burn out, no one really noticed. Functioning, but not fine. And I think that is something we all need to know if you're neurotypical, that is something that non-neurotypicals are struggling with every single day. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, shocking new data from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation reveals that last year only less than 1 in 10 mortgages in our province were issued to first-time homebuyers. BC has the lowest rate in the entire country. Our kids are losing hope as their dream of ever owning a home vanished under this NDP Premier and his total failure to deliver results on his promise of housing affordability for our kids. Now, BC United has a plan to fix it by turning rent payments into down payments with our rent-to-own plan. So my question to the Premier, when will this Premier finally deliver results by adopting BC United's rent-to-own plan and bring back hope? Hope that our kids can one day purchase a home and raise a family and build a future right here in British Columbia.
Minister of Housing.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. No doubt we can agree in this House that people across this province, across this country, need to be able to have a place either to rent at an affordable rate, or those that rent have the ability to move into home ownership. We, I think, all support that notion. What's needed, Honourable Speaker, to do that is reforms. The housing system as it is now working for too many people in our province. We have young families, young people who don't see an opportunity or a pathway to get into home ownership. And honestly, that's why the measures that we've put in with our Homes for People strategy addresses all those levers. Now, the member shared some data. I can share with the member that BC is building 2.5 times more housing than Ontario, adjusted to their size. In fact, our government is seeing 150% more units per resident than the PC government in Ontario. So, Honourable Speaker, the measures we're doing, the putting in place, the allowing 3 to 4 unit single-family lots, allowing for housing to be built through our transit, reforming our system so that people can have an opportunity to stay in our communities, grow in our communities, Honourable Speaker. That's something we're committed to, and we're leading the country in that work.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Well, therein in that answer lies the problem for all the folks that are here listening, because they believe that government is the solution to every problem when they don't realize that government is the problem. The fact of the matter is the results they're getting in British Columbia is we have the highest, most unaffordable housing prices in North America, the highest average rents in Canada. That's the results that their government first supposed to give us. Now, Mr. Speaker, 18 months ago, the Premier promised results that people could touch, see, and experience. 18 months ago. But what parents are experiencing across British Columbia is watching their children have to leave BC in search of affordability, a fact that was highlighted by the Alberta government ads last night on the Canucks hockey game, enticing more British Columbians, more young British Columbians to move to Alberta, the land increasingly seen as opportunity. Last year alone, and I hear the snickering over on that side of the house, last year alone, 70,000 young British Columbians moved to Alberta. Why? Because Alberta has lower taxes. Alberta's got affordable housing. Alberta offers the kind of opportunity that used to exist here in British Columbia. We need to give our kids hope again, which is why our BC United plan is about turning rent payments into down payments and helping young people get back into housing and believe they've got a future in BC. So again, to the Premier, when will the Premier finally deliver results, not announcements, results, so that they can adopt an option that will work? BC United's plan, our rent-to-own plan, to turn rent payments into down payments and help our young people have an opportunity to own a home, raise a family, and build a future right here in British Columbia.
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And again, I think all members of this House can agree that people that are renting should have an opportunity to buy a home, Honourable Speaker. That's why when we brought the legislation in place this last fall to allow 3 or 4 units on single-family lots, they opposed it. They opposed it, Honourable Speaker. They didn't want to see those types of opportunities be created, opportunities for multi-generational families to be able to live on one parcel of land, Honourable Speaker. Now, a member talks about people and moving to different provinces. We have 10,000 people coming to BC net every 37 days. 10,000. A member said, the leader of the BCU party says, they're coming internationally. People are coming to British Columbia for opportunity. One of the strongest economies in the country. People are coming here for opportunity, Honourable Speaker. Now, the leader of the BCU party here says, you know what? We're going to do what we did before. He's going to dust off the old playbook. And they're going to do it. You know, Honourable Speaker, you can go to Vancouver and visit a place called Little Mountain, and you can see the legacy. You can see the legacy of this member here and his colleagues in full action. Honourable Speaker, people of British Columbia cannot afford to head back in that direction again.
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Well, newsflash to the minister, we actually have the 3rd worst economy in all of Canada right now. So, yeah, bummer about that one. Today, the Bank of Canada is warning of a steep jump in mortgage payments due to rising interest costs. But who's to blame? Well, Scotiabank confirmed that the majority of interest rate hikes are the direct result of provincial inflationary deficits like the record-setting ones created by this NDP. So it's no wonder why nearly 70,000 of our children and youth and young professionals left for Alberta last year. They can't afford a mortgage or rent. BC United's rent-to-own plan through new homes frees up rental apartments and takes pressure off of the housing market. So when will the Premier finally deliver results by adopting BC United's rent-to-own plan and bring back hope that our kids desperately need to one day purchase their own home and raise their own families right here in BC?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We share that commitment of wanting to see young people be able to stay in our province, to be able to raise their families in communities that they grew up. That's why we brought such bold action into the Legislature last fall. Honourable Speaker, they opposed many of those initiatives. They opposed most of those initiatives, Honourable Speaker, and it was a shame because now those very initiatives that we have part of our Homes for People strategy are being adopted across the country. In fact, the federal government has said we are going to tie infrastructure funding if you do the work that BC is doing in communities throughout the province. And Honourable Speaker, I'll share another interesting fact for them. They say people are going to Alberta. You know who's coming from Alberta? Doctors, nurses, Honourable Speaker. You look at the data. I'm happy to share with the member across the way. We are seeing doctors and nurses coming to British Columbia, Honourable Speaker. And I'll end with this, Honourable Speaker. The member mentioned Scotiabank.
Members.
The member mentions Scotiabank. I can share with the member that the CEO of Scotiabank was an author of a report on how to address the housing crisis in Ontario. We have adopted all the policies that the CEO suggested, and they're looking to BC as a leader in the country when it comes to reforms needed to ensure there's housing available for people in British Columbia.
Member for Kelowna Mission Supplemental.
Well, I think that the minister needs to get outside of the echo chamber because the very initiatives that he's mentioning are creating housing chaos within our municipalities. How do we know? Housing starts in Q1 are down in BC. High taxes, high fees, and high rents are causing our kids to give up and move to Alberta. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the average two-bedroom rental will soon reach $2,800 in Metro Vancouver, up $1,000 a month from 2021. But the best that the NDP Premier and this housing minister can offer is a BC Builds plan, adding less than 1% of the 700,000 homes that CMHC says are needed to restore affordability. So why won't the Premier adopt the BC United plan to turn rent payments into down payments and give young people hope again?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Everyone in this place supports the idea of somebody renting, getting into home ownership. In fact, the federal Liberals in their platform committed to a a program similar to what they've announced. They've had challenges rolling it out. They've had challenges rolling it out because they know that it's a very difficult proposal to move forward. But that being said, the principle is something we support as well. But what I'll say to the member is, she mentioned CMHC data. CMHC says we're building 2.5 times more housing than Ontario. 2.5 times. CMHC March 2024 monthly housing stable reports has this information. I'm happy to share with the member. Honourable Speaker, we know that the system that we have for housing is not working for too many people. For too many years, we had governments, in fact, the government, the former party here, former BC Liberal Party, governments like them who decided, you know what, we're not going to invest in the affordable housing that people need. We're going to just stay out of the way and somehow this is going to solve itself, Honourable Speaker. We've seen that failed policy and the outcomes that come from that, Honourable Speaker. I think British Columbians are ready for the actions that we're taking. In fact, I know they are because we're getting messages from people and leaders across the country who are saying we would like to replicate the initiatives that you're taking on to ensure that our communities have housing that they need as well.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. With close to $500 million being earmarked for 7 FIFA games, it's important to ask who benefits from government spending. FIFA is not designed for most British Columbians. While the wealthiest will enjoy the fanfare, the majority of people will be footing the bill while we watch from our living rooms. Meanwhile, BC has the lowest taxes on people who earn $150,000 or more, making a mockery of our progressive taxation system and eliminating that most Canadian value, fairness. British Columbians are struggling to get by, struggling to afford housing, struggling to buy their groceries, and programs like Safer, disability supports, and the Canada-BC rental benefit don't provide enough of a safety net. My question is to the Premier. Will his government commit to tackling income inequality head-on by adjusting our highest tax rate brackets to fall in line with other provinces so that the highest earners pay their fair share?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Here we have it. One party says that we have taxes too high. Another party confirming that we actually have some of the lowest taxes for people earning less than $150,000 a year. Honourable Speaker, the member asks about FIFA, and I'll say this.
Members.
Honourable Speaker, I'll say this about FIFA. we are going to be welcoming the world to British Columbia. This is one of the premier events in the world. It's going to benefit, the member says who is going to benefit? It's going to benefit our communities. It's going to benefit our local economies. We're going to welcome people. It's going to support our tourism economy, Honourable Speaker. And we have partners, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, who are excited because it means economic opportunities for those nations. So everyone is going to find benefits from this. I certainly hope that all members in this place are able to use this to also promote sports and promote physical activity amongst our youth, Honourable Speaker. There are so many valuable things that come from promoting sport. I believe in it strongly. My colleagues believe in it strongly. But at the same time, Honourable Speaker, we're also increasing funding for SAFER. We're increasing programs for people. We can do both, Honourable Speaker, and that's what we're committed to on this side of the House.
Leader of the Third Party Supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question was about income tax brackets for the highest earners in British Columbia. Inequality has gotten so bad that we now casually talk about the cost of living, the cost of just meeting basic needs to stay alive. This government's failure to address wealth inequality is evident not only in its willingness to fund FIFA, but not to ensure that everybody in BC has housing. While people struggle, the oil and gas sector keeps taking record profits. The federal government's failure to bring in a windfall profit tax means that $4.6 billion in revenues that could help all of these people who need it across this country and in this province was just left off the table. Instead of meeting the basic needs of people in BC, this government has subsidized the dirtiest industry in the world. My question again is to the Premier. Will the Premier commit to advocating for a windfall profit tax on the oil and gas sector?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. There was many comments made in that question. I'll start with housing. There is no government in this country that is investing at the levels we are into affordable housing. We're the only province, Honourable Speaker, that's funding housing for Indigenous people on and off reserve. We have funding available for communities throughout the province. We have projects opening everywhere. And the member talks about inequality. I can assure the member that every one of my colleagues got into politics to address inequality. We want to make sure that, our neighbours have the same opportunities that we want for our own families, for our own kids, Honourable Speaker. That's why we've taken measures to reduce taxes for working people making below $150,000 a year, Honourable Speaker. We took those steps because we understand that working people need supports. We have many more initiatives that we're going to be doing in the future, Honourable Speaker, but we are committed, I can assure that member, we are committed to addressing inequality in all of our work that we do.
House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This Premier's NDP are radical activists out to shape British Columbia for their own extreme image. This Premier and his government stand for taking away the rights of women to be safe and treated fairly, taking away the rights of parents to be involved in their children's education, taking away the rights of landowners who follow local zoning, taking away the rights of communities by overriding official community plans, taking away the rights of people who voice opinions over housing decisions, taking away the rights of people to choose what kind of vehicle to own, taking away the rights of people to access Crown land and private property, taking away the rights of nurses and healthcare workers to be employed, and taking away the rights of people to access healthcare in a timely manner. Mr. Speaker, the list goes on and on and on. It seems like this NDP Premier hasn't found any private rights that he respects. And, Mr. Speaker, he's gambling with BC's future by running the largest deficits in BC's history, and not just last year or this year, but for the foreseeable future. My question to the Premier through you, Mr. Speaker, will this Premier start giving rights back to everyday hardworking people instead of taking them away, and he can start by hiring our healthcare workers?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, obviously I disagree with the member's characterization. In British Columbia, we believed during the COVID-19 pandemic and in supporting people in healthcare that we needed to support people in long-term care, that we needed to support healthcare workers, and we did so in an unprecedented way. I might add, with the unanimous support for most of that period of this legislature, and I'm very proud of that, Honourable Speaker. We continue to act. People talked about doctors and nurses earlier, Honourable Speaker. We continue to act consistent with the Public Health Act to support our public health professionals in BC who have done an outstanding job, a world-leading job, in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. We believe, indeed, in expanding rights for people in BC. We believe, for example, that women have rights over their own bodies, and we've expanded
Thank you, members. Thank you. Thank you, members. Let's continue. Thank you, members.
Honourable Speaker, we believe that children have the right to go to school without being harassed.
House Leader of the Fourth Party supplemental. House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Speaker, GDP growth in British Columbia before the NDP took power was around 2.5%. Over the last painful 7 years, BC's GDP growth has averaged around 1.5%. Now, with this NDP's reckless policies, BC's GDP growth is estimated to be as low as 0.4% by 2030. For regular people, this means smaller paychecks and bigger bills. Mr. Speaker, BC is facing a crisis in everything that matters. Most importantly, we have an economy that's going off a cliff and the Premier who is asleep at the wheel. This is a recipe, Mr. Speaker, for economic ruin, which will destroy the future of families in British Columbia. Young people are struggling to move out on their own because housing is either not available or unaffordable. Food inflation is going through the roof.
Member.
Private sector job growth is virtually non-existent, and wages are not going up.
Let's have a question, member.
Mr. Speaker, more and more people are making the heartbreaking decision to leave BC as it is the only option for them to be able to build
let's have a question, please.
My question, Mr. Speaker. My question, Mr. Speaker. When will this Premier change course and bring in policies to promote economic growth and start fighting for people who are trying to build a life here in BC instead of standing with radical activist extremists who want to tear down BC, destroy everything we built, and
Thank you, member.
to call ourselves British
Thank you.
Columbians?
We heard the question. Thank you. Minister of Jobs and Economic Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And what I would say to the member opposite is never let the facts get in the way of a good story. Boy, our GDP has increased since 2017 by 16.9%. BC continues to be an economic driver in Canada. The member opposite made many false statements, including a claim that we have a low average income. In fact, we lead the country in the highest average income of $34.68. We've also done incredible work to make sure that minimum wage has been raised for the average British Columbian, Honourable Speaker. We continue to grow our economy, driving diversification to ensure that we have a strong economy to go forward, Honourable Speaker. We're seeing incredible investments coming into our economy from E1 Molly of $1 billion, incredible investments coming into our life science sector, many, many more, Honourable Speaker. Our economy continues to do well, and we're leading the country.
Thank you. Member for Coquitlam-Millardville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, anti-Semitism is on the rise in Canada. In 2023, there were over 5,000 documented acts of violence, harassment, and vandalism aimed at Jews, more than twice the documented incidents in 2022. I have a letter here from Premier John Horgan written to Nico Slabinski, Senior Director with the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. And the letter is dated June 14th, 2022. In the letter, Premier Horgan notes that the province of British Columbia fully supports the federal government's adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and rejects all forms of discrimination as outlined in Canada's anti-racism strategy. That was Premier Horgan's commitment, to use the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism when addressing this hatred. Mr. Speaker, does our current Premier continue to support this commitment to use the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question. Clearly, we all stand in solidarity in this House against the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism in this province, and I know the member has been very vocal in what the community is facing. Hate in all its forms is unacceptable in this province. We had a good discussion about our approach to responding to hate through the Anti-Racism Act that's before this bill, and I understand that for many Jewish people in this province, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is an important tool to help government understand what anti-Semitism is showing up in the province. We've taken the approach through our bills and legislation to not adopt specific definitions in legislation because those things change over time. The way communities are experiencing hate and the way communities tell us what they're experiencing changes over time. So what we need to do is continually meet with communities, understand what's happening to them at the time, and then respond.
Member supplemental.
So I'm going to hear that as no, they're not adopting the IHRA definition, because this wasn't a question about legislation. It was a question that was that the former Premier said that we would use that definition as a working definition, but clearly that seems to no longer be the case. So, Mr. Speaker, on Yom HaShoah, the Premier committed to stand up to anti-Semitism because we have seen what happens when leaders are silent. And on the very same day on Yom HaShoah, we heard the member from Richmond, Queensborough suggest that the anti-Semitism we are seeing on campus is somehow justified because of what he experienced in India as a Sikh individual. Therefore, the hate we see on campus is not targeted at Jews, it's just criticizing a state. And his subsequent apology is for his lack of clarity, not an apology for tokenism or for the deep hurt that he has caused. Well, Mr. Speaker, the lived experience of UBC Jewish students, faculty, and staff is that they are not welcome on campus because they believe in the right to self-determination. They are being targeted because they are Jews. And this is not the first time this member has had to make an apology for his anti-Semitism, which consistently turns out to be non-apologies, and he's also not the only New Democrat who's made anti-Semitic comments. So clearly, the government caucus is not interested or does not understand what anti-Semitism is and how it looks. So I'm going to ask if this government is interested in doing any anti-Semitism training to make sure that they don't step into it yet again.
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. All members of this House had an all-party committee. Part of the recommendations that came from the all-party committee was that there be anti-racism, anti-hate training to address challenges in society, but also to enrich our knowledge and understanding of how different communities face racism. We, on our side, have committed that we will ensure that when the legislature comes back, that everyone has that training. We had a great discussion yesterday, the member and I, on the important steps that we have to do with communities as we move forward to address hate in our communities. Now, the member makes comments, yesterday in fact, made a comment that there are some Jewish communities that we should be listening to and the other ones are fringe. The member said fringe, specifically. And we don't take that approach. We believe that all Jewish members of our community have their own lived experience. We want to hear from all of them. And part of the work that we'll be doing with the anti-racism strategy is taking the next steps, hopefully with unanimous support of this House, in engaging with communities to ensure that their understanding of what racism is and how they feel it is reflected in the work we do as we go forward.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 18 months ago, the Premier promised, quote, results that people can feel, touch, and experience in their lives, end quote. Yet, for mothers like Alicia Ludlow, these promises mean nothing and she is losing hope. Alicia can't find childcare, limiting her to part-time work and putting her on the brink of homelessness. She struggles to pay the bills because she can only work 4 hours a day due to the lack of childcare. And this is 7 years, after 7 years, that this NDP government has promised universal $10 a day childcare. So after 7 years, and despite running the largest inflationary deficit in BC's history, why has the Premier utterly failed to deliver on his promise to Alicia and thousands of other parents?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And we know that childcare is a really important core service to so many families in British Columbia. And it is one of the largest expenses that families face. And 7 years ago, it was a real patchwork, Honourable Speaker. It was left to market forces, and it was very difficult for families to find childcare and to be able to afford childcare. So we have been working on our Childcare BC plan, and we now have 15,000 $10 a day spaces in British Columbia. That's not all, Honourable Speaker. With our affordable childcare benefit, over 35,000 children and their families are supported monthly, so that low and middle income families save up to $1,250 per month per child, Honourable Speaker. Over 140,000 families are being supported by at least one of our programmes, and we are increasing the number of spaces in the province by thousands, Honourable Speaker. And we're making a real difference, and I hear from families that this is life-changing. Honourable Speaker, we cannot afford to go back to the situation where childcare was not accessible and not affordable for British Columbians.
House Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Premier continues to display why this NDP government won the award for being the most secretive government in all of Canada. The Premier concealed a massive cyber attack on the provincial government for 8 days. And I don't know why members opposite are smiling, but 8 days this cyber attack was concealed, only for the Premier to issue a quiet statement while everyone was busy watching last night's Canucks game. Now, British Columbians are rightly worried about their sensitive information, wondering if their information has been compromised by a foreign state-sponsored cyber attack. So the question to the Premier is this: will the Premier say today who was responsible for this attack, how much sensitive personal information was compromised, and why would the Premier have waited 8 days to issue a quiet statement during a Canucks game to disclose this very serious breach to British Columbians?
Hear, hear. Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. And what I'll tell the member is this: nothing was hidden at all. You know, Honourable Speaker, now I understand the triple delete scandal with that kind of nonsense. Honourable Speaker.
Yeah, members. Member. You asked a question. Member, question was asked. Are you interested in listening to the answer or not?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Here's not indignation. Here's fact, Honourable Speaker. Fact is this:
Why people are interrupting, I don't understand. Please. Oh no, he got the floor, member. Don't argue with me.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. He asked what I believe, and what the public believe, to be a serious question about their information, Honourable Speaker. And I'm trying to tell the Honourable Member that when an incident like this happens, the first thing that happens is the protection of the system, Honourable Speaker. The protection of the information that's done by technical experts, Honourable Speaker, who work on the advice of the Canadian cybersecurity system, Honourable Speaker. And Honourable Speaker, The reason they do that is because if you go out and give information before that's done, you actually end up compromising people's information potentially, Honourable Speaker. So the priority is to ensure system is protected, that information is protected, and Honourable Speaker, that is why, Honourable Speaker, we are able to say that there is no evidence that there was any compromising of sensitive information, Honourable Speaker. We take our advice from the technical security experts in this facility. We take our advice from the Canadian Cyber Security Service, who deal with these kinds of things on an ongoing basis, along with the agencies who do the investigations. That's who we will take the advice on in terms of protecting public information every single time. We will never take advice from an opposition that all they want to do is play politics on it.
The bell ends the question period. Member for Langford, Langford Wandifuka.
Mr. Speaker, I just rise to present a petition.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to present a petition on behalf of John Bruises and a number of people from my community calling on the government to amend the Trespass Act to include a statement on rainforest trees.
Member for Vancouver Kensington.
Honourable Speaker, I'm pleased to present the report of the Special Committee to review passenger-directed vehicles. I move that report be taken as read and received.
Member, the question is the report to be taken as read and received. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member.
Honourable Speaker, I ask leave of the House to move a motion to adopt the report.
Is leave granted? Aye. Proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that the report be adopted, and in doing so, would like to make some brief comments. Our committee makes 34 recommendations to improve service provision and ensure an effective regulatory environment for passenger-directed vehicles. Our recommendations were informed by a very robust series of informational briefings from a number of public bodies, and as well a very well-attended public consultation. During our public consultation, the committee heard from taxi and ride-hailing drivers, and companies, as well as individuals, communities, and groups involved in the sector. Mr. Speaker, committee members developed our recommendations based on a number of key principles that we agreed on. These include equity, affordability, safety, accessibility, integration and efficiency, a rural lens, and data-driven and transparent decision-making. We agreed and reached consensus to highlight improvements to accessible services as a priority. We know, all members in the House know, that serving people with disabilities is a matter of respecting human rights. And throughout our consultations, we heard just a lot of stories from British Columbians with disabilities about the significant challenges they experience trying to access passenger-directed vehicles. Our committee, and I know our House shares the perspective that British Columbians of all abilities should be treated with dignity and respect and have equitable and timely access to service. On behalf of all committee members, I would like to sincerely thank the individuals with disabilities who took the time to share their very personal experiences with us. The committee also heard about the unique challenges faced by BC's small, rural, and remote communities when it comes to transportation. Going forward, we hope to see a holistic approach adopted to improve transportation connectivity. Throughout the course of our work, we also heard about the need for more data in all aspects of the transportation sector. And the committee supports evidence-based decision-making using quality data that's easily accessible. Ongoing data collection and analysis will be key to inform future regulatory and policy development. I'd like to acknowledge staff in the Parliamentary Committee Office who supported our review, including Karen Riar, Lisa Hill, Daniel Midjun, Jonathan Hamilton, Sean Morgado, and Mary Newell. Thank you as well to Mandel Heffelfinger, Dwight Schmidt, and Daniel Suter from Hansard Services for their assistance with our work. Finally, I'd like to express my appreciation to all committee members. We're at the end of our deliberations and appreciate your efforts. I want to recognize the MLA member from West Vancouver Sea to Sky, the member from Nanaimo, North Cowichan, member from Burnaby North, and the member from Richmond, Steveston, and for their dedication, and particularly also recognize the support of our Deputy Chair, very capable Deputy Chair, the member for Prince George Valemount. Thank you very much.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and I very much appreciate the remarks of our chair, the member from Vancouver Kensington. Appreciated the work that she did, making sure that our committee got its work done. And we went through some challenging discussions, but very much appreciated that. I certainly want to echo the comments of the chair of our committee. Committees work because British Columbians speak up, and they take the time and effort to actually contribute to the work that's being done by committees. One of the things that I think moved all of us as committee members were the stories that we heard from persons with disabilities. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, we heard stories where British Columbians with disabilities face discrimination and, quite frankly, poor transportation services. And we know how absolutely essential it is for there to be accessible transportation in British Columbia. Persons with disabilities want to engage fully in their communities, whether they're going to work or school, accessing services. Transportation is critical to that participation. Particularly people with visual disabilities were very difficult to hear their stories. Imagine what it would be like to be dropped off, Mr. Speaker, and not knowing where you were. Imagine being denied a ride because you have a service animal. Those things actually happen in British Columbia on a regular basis. And our committee was very moved by the stories that we heard, and in fact it had a significant impact on the recommendations that we present today. And as someone who lives and represents rural and smaller communities, there are very unique transportation issues, and MLAs who serve those parts of the province hear those concerns all the time. So together, Mr. Speaker, we need to focus on addressing the gaps that exist in transportation networks in these communities and across the province. Like my colleague and the chair of our committee, we want to acknowledge the contributions of the committee members and also recognize her work as our chair. Most importantly, we want to thank the Parliamentary Committee's Office and Hansard. We spent a lot of very late evenings working together, spending time together. Hansard, we're often, I'm sure, wondering about some of the discussions we had, but we're very grateful, and I too want to express our thanks to Karan Riyar, Lisa, Jonathan, Danielle, and Sean in particular. So, Mr. Speaker, I really appreciate the opportunity to add to the comments made by our chair.
Members, the question is adoption of the report. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to make an introduction.
Is leave granted? Aye. Please proceed.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we have two classes in my riding from Star of the Sea School. We have grade 5 classes led by Mr. Dennis Pasta. They were in here for question period and they are now outside. And now we have the grade 5 class from Miss Wynn's class. So I hope the House makes them welcome. I'm going to go talk to them in a couple minutes, but thanks for coming, guys. I know they're tired from the Canucks game last night, so well rested today, but I appreciate them being here today.
Madam Clerk. Oh, okay. Government House Leader.
Can I seek leave to make a quick introduction?
Absolutely.
Thank you. My friend just made the introduction. I also see Councillor Jennifer Johal, City Councillor of Delta, here with the group. I guess one of Jennifer's children go to the school, and so I want to welcome Councillor Jennifer Johal to this House.
Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the main chamber, I call motion 31 on the order paper. In the Douglas Fir Committee Room, I call Committee of the Whole for Bill 23 Anti-Racism Act. In Birch Committee Room, I call Committee of Supply for the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. Mr. Speaker, I move that motion 31, standing my name on the order paper, which seeks to allow for special proceedings to enable members that are seeking re-election this fall to deliver a farewell address to the House this afternoon.
Member, the question is adoption of motion 31 on the order paper. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call second reading of Bill PR 401, Vancouver Foundation Act.
Member for Langley East.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that Bill number PR 401, entitled Vancouver Foundation Act, be now read a second time. Honourable Speaker, the Vancouver Foundation Act has been amended a number of times since it was first established in 1950, and the bill under consideration today would replace the existing act. The new act continues the corporation as a registered charity, grants its legal capacity, and provides for changes relating to its administration, including the governance structure of the Board of Directors. As reported to this House on May the 8th, the Select Standing Committee on Parliamentary Reform, Ethical Conduct, Standing Orders, and Private Bills considered the bill and heard submissions from the applicant. Following its deliberations, the committee reported that the preamble to the bill proved to its satisfaction and recommended that the bill proceed as presented. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The question is second read of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member for Langley East.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. By leave, I move that the bill be committed to a committee of the whole House for consideration forthwith.
Is leave granted? Thank you. The question is, the question is the bill be committed to a committee of the whole to be considered forthwith. All those in favour say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Committee Chair.
Okay, we'll call the committee to order. We're dealing with Bill PR 401, Vancouver Foundation Act. Shall Clause 1 pass? So ordered. Shall Clause 22 to 27 pass? Thank you. Anyone opposed? So ordered. Shall the preamble pass? So ordered. Shall the title pass? So ordered. Recognizing the member for Langley East.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I move that the committee rise and report the bill complete without amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried. This committee is adjourned.
Chair.
The Committee on Bill PR 401 reports the bill complete without amendment.
Langley East.
You have to go first, Honourable Speaker. You were going to.
No, I was going to do it. I thought you had another point of order or something. I know. When shall the bill be read a third time?
Now, Mr. Speaker.
Members, you heard the question. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Bill PR 401 Vancouver Foundation Act has been read third time and has passed. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call motion 29 on the order paper. Mr. Speaker, I move that motion 29, standing my name on the order paper, be now. I just want to make a few comments, if I can, Honourable Speaker. For the young ones that are just leaving and folks that are watching, sometimes you see in this place maybe a debate and it looks adversarial, but there's a lot of time in here where we actually get along and work well together. And this is an example of this. I want to thank the committee members that work together to come forward and bring forward recommendations about how we strengthen our democracy, how we create more opportunities for people who are elected from different parts of this province to be able to bring important issues, important bills forward for debate in this place. It is, I think, one of the most significant changes to how this place operates that we've seen in a long time, and it's possible because of the collaboration that we had from all members of this chamber. I want to thank the Premier in particular for hearing from our caucus and saying and hearing from them clearly that we need to reform how Monday mornings happen. I know my colleague, the House Leader across the way, had similar conversations with his caucus, and I know the House Leader of the third party had similar views. And this, again, is an example of how we can come together to ensure that future parliaments, future members of this place can represent their communities in a better way. And I want to thank them for all their work.
Member for North Thailand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to stand up today. No, actually, I'm really excited to stand up today to talk about this historic moment in our legislature and recognizing the magnitude that these changes are going to bring. And we don't often see changes in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, so I am delighted that we're having it on discussion on the floor today. So on February the 27th, 2023, this Legislative Assembly agreed that the Special Committee to review private members' business be appointed and empowered to examine the current use of time for private members' business by this legislature, to also look at parliamentary jurisdictions, other parliamentary jurisdictions in Canada, and to make recommendations on possible improvements of private members' business, specifically around private members' motions and private members' bills. And the committee was given the powers of the Standing Select Committee. The committee was to report out by October 5th, 2023, and during that period of adjournment, the committee met in person, virtually to deliberate, prepare, and compose a report with 13 recommendations. Mr. Speaker, as you know, the current use of private members' time consists of 2 hours Monday morning, and the special committee's mandate was to stay inside that time frame. Monday mornings are currently broken into 2 sessions, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. for private member statements and 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. for private members' motions. The committee found through discussions and consultations with their caucuses, these practices no longer fit the needs of private members, as it wasn't allowing for participation in the legislative process. It was also not meeting the needs of members to represent their constituents, enhance transparency, and elevate electoral district issues. Current private member statements currently consist of a 7-5-3 model, where a member standing up a statement speaks for 7 minutes, a member opposite opposes or responds for 5 minutes, and the originating member rebuts for 3 minutes. This practice is felt to be antiquated and didn't achieve any democratic, transparency, or communicative value to members. The second hour for private members was felt to be a bit better, did offer some opportunity for debate, but still did not allow members to participate in the process of creating legislation. Mr. Speaker, as you know, private members' bills are infrequently considered in this chamber, and only 6 have received royal assent since 2001. The Special Committee, in its October 2023 report, proposed the 3 recommendations to reshape private members' time, prioritizing increased equity and participation. As this is on the floor today, I am confident it will pass and these changes will commence in the 2024, after the 2024 provincial general election. Recommended changes to private member statement would be limited to 30 minutes, featuring structural changes and eliminating the reply portion of debate. Each statement would be restricted to 5 minutes and only one topic. applying rules similar to the 2-minute statements prior to question period. Recommendation on private members' bills and motions start with a lottery system overseen by the clerk that would determine the order of private members' business. All private members in the legislature would be eligible in this lottery. Once selected, a member can either do a motion or private members' bills. These motions or bills would have the question put at every stage, rather than adjourning debate without resolution, as happens in our current system. If private members' proposed motions, debates are limited to 75 minutes. Each member has 5 minutes to speak with the question put afterwards. If debates do not conclude within 75 minutes, the House proceeds to the next item on the list, Mr. Speaker. For private members' bills, under the new approach, the Speaker decides admissibility before second reading, and stages are time limited, ensuring priority and movement on the order paper. Subsequently, a new select standing committee for private members' bills will exist to deal with legislation at the committee of the whole stage, so that we're not taking away from government business. Similarly, the motions at each stage, the question will be put, make decisions rather than adjourning debate without resolutions. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to emphasize that this is a historic moment in our legislature, as we haven't seen significant change to the standing orders for private members' time since the 1980s. I think we can all agree that there has been substantial change in the way we live our day-to-day lives, in how we communicate, and what our constituents' expectations are in the role and how we represent them. It's now time for that to be reflected inside this institution. Mr. Speaker, improving members' ability to represent their constituency and provide greater transparency is good governance and can only add value and confidence in our democratic system. I'm very happy that this is on the floor today. I was honored to be asked to chair the Special Committee on Private Members' Time Business, as this was a new experience for me and one that I've taken many lessons from. It's also allowed me to participate in a systemic change that is near and dear to my heart. I felt grateful to be part of the committee that had great discussion and that ended up coming to consensus. I'd like to thank the Premier as well for his leadership, his openness to hearing from caucus on this, and his openness to looking at procedural reform. And I'd also like to thank the members of the committee, the member from Maple Ridge Mission, the member from Port Moody Coquitlam, the member from Vancouver Langara, member from Courtney Comox, member from Saanich North in the Islands, member from Nanaimo North Cowichan, member from Surrey Panorama, member from Fraser Nicola, and especially the Deputy Chair, the member from Abbotsford West, for their contributions and positive spirit of collaboration. When we work together, Mr. Speaker, things get done. Thank you.
Member for Fraser-Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to echo the words of the speaker before me. It certainly was an interesting committee to be a part of, and to have conversation about something as basic as democracy. How do we make the work in this place more relevant to the members and also to the public? It was an honor to serve on a committee that undertook to improve and expand opportunities for private members. And for those of you in the public, private members are members that are not part of the cabinet. And often private members feel that their input is limited. And so it was up to this committee to take a look at those concerns and to put forward recommendations to this House. We looked at how to make this place work better for all members and also for the public. There is a sense when a bill comes on the floor from a private member and it's passed in first reading or second reading, and people are in the public watching, their understanding is that it's been passed. And often private members' bills die on the order papers. And people don't understand that, and it's up to us to make sure that people understand the processes and also that they work for private members. These transformative changes will ensure that all members have the opportunity to have their voices heard and provides a more meaningful use of Monday morning private members' time. I, too, want to thank the support we got from the committees, the Parliamentary Committee Office, and also to the committee members. People came open, ready to discuss change, ready to debate change, and I think that the report reflects the diversity of that group. And it doesn't matter whether you're in government or opposition or a third or fourth party. I think good work was done by all. So thank you very much. I look forward to supporting the motion, and I look forward to implementing this incredible change that will make such a difference for private members in this place.
House Leader of the Third Party.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to be standing in support of this motion, and it is, I think, British Columbians know that the political party I represent has often talked about proportional representation and it's been tied with democratic reform. And when I talk to people about democratic reform, I often say it's more than just proportional representation. It's more than just the electoral event that happens once every 4 years that populates the seats in the desks in this legislative assembly. It is also the way that this House operates, where the power resides, where the control of the agenda exists, and the access that members have when they get elected here to be able to participate in all the ways that a member should be able to participate. And this isn't to diminish necessarily the important role that our Executive Council plays in the cabinet ministers. It is to elevate the members that are not chosen to be in the cabinet, in that Executive Council. It's to ensure that government backbenchers, the members of the official opposition, members of the other parties, independent members, have a way to be able to advance important public policy measures that are important to their constituents, and that when they propose them, as the member who spoke previously, the public is led to believe that when we put a private member's bill on the order papers, that then it's going to follow the natural succession of a bill. And that's not how this system has operated in British Columbia. And so this has been a project, a conversation perhaps, that started with my colleague, who is the former House Leader of the Third Party, the member for Cowichan Valley, and it's with her counterpart at the time, the member from Port Coquitlam. And as I've had the fortune to be the Third Party House Leader, this work continued, these conversations continued. I think there wasn't a meeting that passed with the Government House Leader where I wasn't raising some form of a discussion around advancing a reform of private members' time. And I think what we see here is the work that happens outside of question period. It's the collaborative work that happens. It's the space that I often talk about on committees where the most productive, the most rewarding work happens in the Legislative Assembly. And I think that that's probably where these conversations can move to in the future, is how do we elevate those spaces that produce that very productive and constructive, those relationships. And I think it's important that this House is constantly recommitting itself to the democracy and ensuring that we're not, that we're thickening democracy, say perhaps, making it more resilient. Because as we see democracies around the world fragile and in trouble, it's important that the members that are elected here feel that they can be improving their democracy, feel that they can be reforming democracy. And so while we continue to work for proportional representation, so the actual votes of British Columbians are reflected in our parliaments, the work doesn't stop there, and nor does it need to end there. We can continue to have conversations about how to improve our standing orders, and this is one example of that. And I hope to have the opportunity to continue and to have a private member's bill or a motion, should I get the opportunity to do it post the election next fall. And should I draw an early number to have it done sooner than later, I look forward to the opportunity to provide something for the debate of this House in that form. So with that, I raise my hands to the government, I raise my hands to the chair, the deputy chair, and to all my colleagues on both sides of this House who showed the British Columbians that we can work in a collaborative way, and this is work is the production of that. So, Haich Kasiyam.
Member, the question is adoption of motion 29 on the order paper. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I call Committee of the Whole for Bill 25, Haida Nation Recognition Amendment Act.
Committee Chair.
I'll call the committee to order. We're dealing with Bill 25, Haida Nation Recognition Amendment Act 2024. Shall Clause 2 pass? Recognizing the member for Vancouver-Langara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to be back engaged with the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation on this very important Bill 25. And we know, Madam Chair, that this is an amendment to the Haida Nation Recognition Act itself, that at the end of the last session in May in 2023, we had, by my recollection, about 45 minutes on time allocation to deal with that important bill. And that, Madam Chair, when I look back at the Hansard transcript in the time that I had, the Minister had said in reference to the bill that we are now amending, the act that we're now amending, that this was a first step to have the recognition of the Council Haida Nation, that it's going to be redefined through other governance arrangements that are contemplated in the framework agreement, and that this is an incremental step along the way. So again, Madam Chair, there continues to be reference to incremental steps. I've been of the view, of course, that the nature of Bill 25 is more than just an incremental step, it's a fundamental change. As we've talked about recognizing Aboriginal title to coexist with fee simple interests and private property rights, and the uncertainty around that structure. The Minister went on to say that I think it's important because it is providing, that is this act that we're amending under Bill 25, is providing a restructuring of our relationship with the Haida Nation. And I think at its bottom, what we are trying to do through this incremental step, more will come. And then this is the area, Madam Chair, I wanted to point out. At the time a year ago when we were standing in this chamber in the dying days of that legislative session, and here we are standing here in this chamber in the dying days of this legislative session with only 4.5 days to go. And you've heard our points, Madam Chair, in terms of leader official opposition and myself calling for a pause before the agreement was entered into and this bill to be made an exposure bill. But having said that, in terms of the government coming forward with the Haida Nation Recognition Act itself a year ago, the minister said this: discussion on title is of course going to be something that will have to continue as we're trying to resolve our relationship which started with litigation. But we cannot continue, the Haida have told us that, with an Indian Act band or two bands. We cannot continue with a Society Act created under BC law. The Haida have insisted properly that we redefine and reconstruct that relationship. This bill is a step along the journey to do just that. The definition and the reference that is covered in the Haida Nation Recognition Act is that the Government of British Columbia recognizes that the Haida Nation has inherent rights of governance and self-determination. We had that discussion in the bill debate last time around this bill, and we know that in Clause 2 of Bill 25, the new part that's being added relating to Aboriginal title is being added to the governance section, which is covered in the Recognition Act itself. Under Section 4, so perhaps I could just ask for clarity in terms of where this amendment is dropping in, so to speak, into the Haida Nation Recognition Act. Could the minister responsible here just clarify? I'm just reading the Act against the Bill 25. The following part is added after Section 4, which means, just to clarify, that Part 1 is entitled Governance over Sections 1 to 4 of the Act, and Lands, Part 2, will be a new part of the Act entitled Lands, and the Aboriginal title matters to follow. Can I just get the minister to confirm that that's the structure of this amendment?
Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the member for Vancouver-Langara for the question. I want to perhaps just say how pleased we are to be diving back into our discussions on clause-by-clause review of this bill. For the record, I'll note we moved into committee stage on May the 1st. In that time, we've spent 8 hours and 22 minutes in committee discussions. We've to date gone through Clause 1 discussions of the bill, and for the record, I'll note that Clause 1 merely adds a heading to the Haida Nation Recognition Act, namely Part 1 Governance. During the Clause 1 discussions, the opposition asked quite a range of and a number of questions, including some pertaining to provisions under other sections of the bill, specifically Clauses 2 and 3, which I hope we can get to. After 8 hours and 22 minutes, we moved to Clause 2, where we are now. We haven't yet directly discussed the substance of the bill in the over 8 hours we've spent together, so I appreciate the member diving into the specifics of the bill and asking a question on Clause 2. He asks, I think the question is, does Part 1 deal with governance, and is Part 2 intended to deal with lands? And I can confirm that is the case.
Member.
Madam Chair, I know that the minister, in reading that prepared statement, understands that the context in which we've been discussing this bill, and as I've been minded to speak to, and I know that members of the Council of Haida Nation and First Nations leadership in this province is observing and monitoring, some physically in the chamber, in the gallery, some online. And so the minister may want to refer to the fact that there's been 8 hours and 35 minutes of review on this bill to date. The minister well knows that it's been the view of the Leader of Official Opposition and the BC United Official Opposition Caucus that this is a fundamental change. This is more than just an incremental step. We've called for a pause back on March 22nd, before the agreement was entered into. When the bill came forward and landed on the House of this chamber on April 22nd, on April 24th, we called for this bill to be made an exposure bill because it needs the time and the consideration. And I appreciate the fact that the minister has been patient to enable the discussion that we've been having. But the minister well knows, of course, that the underlying point about the bill, of course, is the agreement itself, the Rising Tide Agreement, the agreement that was entered into on April 14th. We spent, 30, 45 minutes talking about the fact that the agreement itself is not even in effect. It's not even binding right now. This government is bringing forward legislation in Bill 25 on a basis of a non-binding agreement. It hasn't come into effect. The parties still need to determine when it's going to come into effect in the summer. This is just one point. Government has indicated that they're not prepared to consider any amendments to the agreement itself, nation to nation, between the Haida Nation and the province of British Columbia, but they are open to consider reasoned amendments. So obviously, myself in the role that I play needs to understand the underpinnings of the bill. And I would say the underpinnings of the Act, because we had 45 minutes a year ago on the Haida Nation Recognition Act itself. 45 minutes before this government brought closure in effect or time allocation to that bill. Just like they did with the Judicial Review Procedure Act. No questions asked. And that held First Nations accountable for their decisions under Section 7 agreements under DRIPA. This is the way this government makes change. They say it's incremental, but it's not. That's the reason why we called for a pause. That's the reason why we called for this bill to be an exposure bill. And so the minister may want to stand in this House and now say what is a 4-clause bill, that we need to have the front-end discussion. And so when we're talking about Aboriginal title, the minister had said that when I asked the questions on the Haida Nation Recognition Act itself, when the Haida Nation has inherent rights of governance and self-determination, this is an act, by the way, that despite the fact that we only had 45 minutes to debate, the official opposition did vote in favor of this bill. I spoke in favor of the act itself, to recognize the 50-year history of the Council of Haida Nation through its constitution. But even with that, the minister was not able to define what the inherent right of governance and self-determination meant for the Haida Nation. He said that that would be left, in terms of the determination of the scope of these rights of governance and self-determination, to negotiations. So here we are, a year later. This is the result, an agreement that now speaks to title, but also has a 2-year transition period. This is something else that we spent a portion of my 8 hours with this minister talking about, which is this 2-year transition period, which is, we'll figure out the details later. I would have thought, as the Premier of this province has been trumpeting, this is a template agreement to recognize title in our province. It's a new model. Well, let's understand what this new model is. So through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, in order for this template, this new model of agreement of title, recognition of 100% of a title assertion to this particular nation as it might be used by other nations in this province, will the government need to recognize that nation first through a recognition act of governance, as was done a year ago with the Haida Nation?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the member for Vancouver-Langara for the question. There are indeed 4 clauses in the bill, but some of them are more substantive than others, I agree. The member noted his call for a pause, and we had, in those 8 hours and 22 minutes, considerable discussion on that suggestion, that recommendation by the member opposite. My understanding is of clause by clause is that we are to examine the bill, and I of course said in those earlier conversations, the 8 hours and 22 minutes to which I referred, that it was entirely appropriate to discuss the agreement, which we have done. And I also confirmed that, of course, as in any context, the government is open to reasoned amendments on any bill before the House. That is, of course, one of the purposes of clause by clause. So I confirmed that, and I want to acknowledge and thank the member for leading his colleagues to be able to support the bill, the Haida Nation Recognition Act that was before us last fall, and I appreciate that very much. And I continue to hope, just as in the context of the UNDRIP legislation, the Historic Declaration Act, that after considerable debate in this House, I wasn't here, but of course I've read the Hansard, that the opposition will be similarly in a position to support this historic legislation. The member used the phrase, because I think he was quoting me, and the notion of incremental steps was the phrase that is discussed. And I can report to the member that in today's the Canadian Bar Association Journal, just released this morning, they comment as follows on this legislation, quote, "The Haida reconciliation approach assumes an ongoing dynamic relationship between the parties, and it will be subject to ongoing modification and adjustment through the coming decades or even centuries," close quote. So I think that confirms that incremental nature of what I tried to indicate in earlier comments to the member. I should say that the member's specific question was, are we going to need to do a recognition of every First Nations governance as legislation of this kind may come forward in the future? Members is well aware, as Shadow Minister for Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, the diversity of First Nations in our province. The 200+ First Nations are at different stages, have different forms of governance. So I can't say that that would be the case. Indeed, the member will be aware that there are some nations who have strong self-government arrangements already in place. West Bank, Sasha are 2 examples that come to mind. So there is not going to be a consistent approach, nor should there be, given the nature of Indigenous governance in our province. With that, Madam Chair, I move that the committee rise, report progress, and seek leave to sit again.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried. This committee is adjourned.
Committee Chair.
The Committee on Bill 25 reports progress and asks leave to sit again.
Government House Leader.
When shall the committee sit again, Mr. Speaker?
When shall the committee sit again, Government House Leader?
Next sitting, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Mr. Speaker, Section A reports progress on Bill 23 and asks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again, Government House Leader?
Next sitting, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Honourable Speaker, Committee of Supply Section C reports progress of the estimates of the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General and seeks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again?
Next sitting, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Government House Leader.
Move the House to now adjourn.
Members, you heard the question to adjourn the House. All those in favor indicate aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1 p.m. today.